So far, we have mostly asked what a matrix does to space. Rank told us how many dimensions survive, and the null space told us which directions disappear. Now we add measurement. To compare vectors geometrically, we need lengths, angles, and shadows. The tool that packages all of that into one number is the dot product. It turns the question, how much does one vector point in the direction of another, into something we can compute. The dot product measures alignment. When two vectors point mostly in the same direction, the dot product is positive. When they meet at a right angle, the dot product is 0. When they point mostly against each other, the dot product is negative. The formula uses the lengths of the two vectors and the cosine of the angle between them. But the picture is simpler. The dot product measures how much one vector agrees with another direction. Projection turns the dot product into a visible action. Imagine shining a light straight down from a vector onto a chosen line. The shadow on that line is the projection. The dot product tells how long that shadow should be, including whether it points forward or backward. So projection is not a mysterious formula. It is the part of one vector that lives along another direction. Once we have projection, we can split a vector into two pieces. One piece is parallel to the direction we care about. The other piece is perpendicular to that direction. Together, those two pieces add back to the original vector. This decomposition is one of the most useful geometric moves in linear algebra. It lets us separate what is explained by a direction from what is left over. Orthogonality means perpendicularity in the language of the dot product. If the dot product of two vectors is 0, neither vector has any component along the other. They share no direction. This is stronger than just saying the vectors are different. Orthogonal directions separate information cleanly. That is why perpendicular axes are so useful. Movement along one axis does not contaminate movement along the other. Projection is not limited to a single line. We can project a vector onto an entire subspace, such as a plane. The result is the point in that subspace closest to the original vector. The difference between the original vector and the projection is called the residual. Geometrically, that residual points straight out from the subspace. It is perpendicular to every direction inside the subspace. Every subspace has a companion idea, the orthogonal complement. It contains all directions perpendicular to the subspace. For a plane through the origin in three-dimensional space, the orthogonal complement is the line pointing straight out of the plane. This lets us split space into two clean parts. One part lies inside the subspace. The other part is completely perpendicular to it. Here is the key closest point idea. Suppose a target point sits outside a subspace. If you choose a point in the subspace that is not directly underneath the target, you can still slide inside the subspace and get closer. Only when the leftover error is perpendicular to the subspace can no sideways slide improve it. That is why closest point problems always end with an orthogonality condition. The best approximation leaves an error that the subspace cannot explain. Dot products also explain why perpendicular unit axes make coordinates so simple. If the basis directions are unit length and mutually orthogonal, each coordinate is just a projection. To find how much of a vector points along the first axis, take a dot product with that axis. Do the same for the second axis, and then the third. The geometry of coordinates becomes a collection of shadows. This is the idea behind orthonormal bases. Here is the core picture to keep. The dot product measures alignment between directions. A projection is the shadow of one vector onto another direction or subspace. Orthogonality means the dot product is zero, so one direction has no component along the other. The closest point in a subspace is found by making the leftover residual perpendicular to that subspace. These ideas turn geometry into computation. In the next episode, we will use orthonormal bases and QR decomposition to make projections stable and efficient.